Good morning and welcome to WGN TV Political Report. I'm Paul Lisnick. Well, the final countdown to Election Day is on. In just 3 weeks, voters on both sides of the aisle will make their picks for the November ballot. Now, in the Republican race for governor, the top candidates are feeling the pressure to prove they are the right person to challenge Governor Pritzker. Aurora Mayor Richard Irvin, State Senator Darren Bailey both got multi-million-dollar cash infusions this past week from respective donors Ken Griffin and Richard Uihlein. And after spending months and millions of dollars talking to voters through television ads, the pair finally met face-to-face at a debate held on Thursday. As expected, the attacks continued.
I'm not interested in defeating you just because you're a Democrat. I'm interested in defeating you because you are a corrupt Democrat.
And I won't be lectured by someone like Darren Bailey, who had a mask mandate on his own farm for the
for the
mask mandate on his own farm for the folks that he bussed in from other countries.
Yeah, Irvin has long been perceived as the race's frontrunner, backed by $50 million from Griffin and much of the state's GOP establishment. But our WGN TV Emerson College poll showed last month that Irvin and Bailey were nearly neck and neck. Candidates Jesse Sullivan, Gary Rabine haven't shied away from criticizing Irvin either, as they both look for an opening with a large group of undecided voters. Here to talk more about the state of the race is longtime political consultant Patrick Finkston, who also writes a newsletter called The Illinois. That's a great name. Patrick, good to see you.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, let me ask you a few things. First of all, it took until Thursday of this past week for Irvin and Bailey to actually face themselves as the two frontrunners. What has Irvin's strategy been, and is it a good one?
Duck, dive, dodge. Stay away from anything that gets you in trouble. He's been hiding behind these $50 million from Ken Griffin. They've spent well in excess of 12 to 15 million on TV at this point, and they want that to be their message, and they don't want him to be in a position where he has to answer anything uncomfortable.
So Irvin and Bailey have been the top guys, and our poll even showed that back when we did it. But I'm wondering, do you see any other candidates, like maybe former Senator Schimpf, who got the Trib endorsement? Does that make a difference, or is this a two-man race in your view?
Jesse Sullivan is in third in most
and
of
and he's got his own money too. Right?
And he does have some West Coast kind of tech money that has come in. He has definitely run a Christian right-focused campaign. He's also young, very photogenic, well-spoken, and could kind of be an alternative to these guys who are bickering back and forth. Schimpf did, of course, get the Tribune endorsement, but he's lagging way behind in money and in polls, and I don't know that that's going to be enough to get him in the mix.
Irvin obviously has been taking fire, not only from Democrats, of course, but also his fellow Republicans, and they've been going after his image as the crime fighter and all this, and calling him a Democrat. Does any of that take a toll?
It has to. If you look at his polling, it has stayed relatively consistent since he went on the air. It's been interesting to see that his numbers haven't exploded at this point with all of the money and all of the structure that he has behind him. And they've gotten so many of the normal politicos in the state to jump on board. He should be running away with this thing by now. And the fact that he isn't shows that either voters aren't buying it or there's a problem with the message. I'm not exactly sure which one it is.
So the candidates are making a lot of promises. That's what candidates do. But look, whoever wins this thing on the Republican side, and if they should win the governor's race in November, they're working with a Democratic House and Senate. What can they realistically do?
Well, first of all, some Republicans will tell you that they can at least get out of the superminority in both the House and Senate. And there are people who will tell you there's a path for Republican House majority in November if things all go their way. I don't know that that looks the same way today now that the Roe issue is out there, and abortion's going to really drive turnout in the suburbs most likely. But that's 15 seats, and there are definitely 15 seats that they think they can target in the House.
On the economy for a moment, I do want to talk about the abortion issue, but on the economy, you know, many of the candidates, I'm slashing this, I'm slashing that. Irvin's got his, axe in his hand with one of his commercials and all of that. Once again, much of the budget of the legislature is really untouchable by them. There's very little discretionary money left for them to play with. So does that resonate with voters?
We're still talking about 50-some billion in a state budget every year. And that's a lot of real money and a lot of real tax dollars. And there are billions of dollars in spending that the legislature and the governor controls each year. And somebody's going to have to figure out what happens when all of the federal money runs out and when tax revenue goes down, which it's expected to do in the next couple of years. So you have a lot of open questions and a lot of open spending opportunities out there where you've got two very divergent views on the left and right in Springfield.
You mentioned that Jesse Sullivan's presented himself as a Christian conservative. That's who he is. That's how he's presented. Darren Bailey is also putting himself out as the only real true conservative, also with those very strong values. But this is Illinois, and there is Chicago and Cook County. And you can tell me if you disagree, but I'm not sure you can win a governor's race or any race without the support in Chicago and Cook County. So is that a smart way to play it, or is it they're being themselves and let people vote as they will?
You have to look at it as the primary and the general. You have to win the primary. And the Republican Party has found itself in a more conservative position than it has really in any time since Reagan, most likely, in Illinois. And that's even in the time of Jim Thompson here, who was a pro-choice governor. It's a completely new electorate on the Republican side, especially downstate. The question is, who's able to kind of shake that Etch-a-Sketch after the primary and redefine themselves in a way in November that doesn't scare away suburban moms?
That's going to be a real tough thing to do, to really shift from that kind of image, I think. The Trump endorsement, our poll that WGN took showed that 57% of Republicans think it helps a candidate who's got Trump's endorsement, less so in Chicago. But my question is, in this state, in the Republican primary, how much does the Trump endorsement matter?
It will help Darren Bailey if he gets it, because he's running such a downstate-focused campaign. He thinks he can win this race on Southern Illinois and a Central Illinois kind of showdown with Urban's money. And there has to be a feeling in his camp that if they're able to showcase Trump and put him at the forefront in those final couple of weeks, that he can turn around enough downstaters that it can offset the likely beating he takes in the city and suburbs.
I want to ask about some other races, but before we get there, just a general question about the atmosphere of this primary, maybe here, maybe around the country. There seems to be a different atmosphere this year than in the past.
It is, and I don't have my finger on it specifically. Obviously, the later primary is kind of getting people tuned in a little later than they often would, because oftentimes people are paying attention to statewide campaigns before Christmas, before Thanksgiving. Now everyone picked it up after spring break, so everyone's kind of getting a later start on things. The Republican electorate is in just a state of chaos, in my mind, that it's not necessarily so much the issues, the pro-life, pro-gun sort of standard Republican talking points, and it kind of turned into the party of Trump. So what is it now? And obviously the Roe situation is going to change everything.
Yeah, and that comes right about the same time as our election. In the U.S. Senate race, by the way, on the Republican side, a host of candidates, probably the best known, Kathy Salvi, more mainstream among them. How do you see that race shaping up, and do any of them present a formidable challenge to Tammy Duckworth?
To answer your second question first, no. This is almost pointless at this point. Kathy Salvi is, I think, an interesting candidate and has some experience on the trail, can raise some money, can make herself seem like she has a prayer at least. The rest of that field is the QAnon, election-denying, far-right, unelectable in a statewide race sort of group of candidates.
So we can kind of see where that's going. Before I run out of time, I want to ask you about the Illinois Secretary of State Republican side, because we see a lot of ads on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side, you've got Representative Dan Brady, John Milhiser. These are accomplished, experienced candidates. We have had Republican secretaries of state in Illinois, George Ryan, the last one. Is that open seat a possibility for Republicans?
Yes, especially if Alexei Giannoulias is the Democratic nominee. I think Republicans see him as a weak general election candidate because of his failures in the U.S. Senate race, the scandals that came along with it, the bank issues, et cetera, that leave him open to fodder in November.
Not true with Valencia if she gets it?
Less. I think the ethical questions around her husband will be there. I don't know that they resonate quite as much as, quote unquote, failed banker or something like that.
All right. Patrick Pinkston, editor of Illinois, with a Z in there, which I enjoy reading. Thank you for being with me. We'll touch base with you as this election proceeds.
You bet. Thanks.
Appreciate it. And coming up next on WGN-TV Political Report, we're going to Washington. Will lawmakers take action on gun control after the shootings in Uvalde, Tulsa, and Buffalo leave communities across the U.S. reeling? And still to come this half hour, the list of people looking to take on Mayor Lori Lightfoot next year, it keeps on growing. Hear from the latest candidates who want to jump and have jumped in the race.